What's happening, people? Back with another reaction, back with some more acid-techno. And we're back with a request. Wanted to give a big shout out to Karsten, major friend of the channel, in fact, friend of my old channel. And indeed, I think among people who remain, currently active, commenting on the channel, he's one of the most old school in that regard. I used to put mixes on my old channel, and that was all I did. I just did mixes like once or twice a year. I would do a video mix. But yeah, I put, track lists, and there was once where there was a mix I forgot to put a track list, and he commented like, hey, love the mix, is there any chance of getting a track list? And I was able to, cobble it together. And we've been talking about tunes ever since, so big shout out to Karsten. And he mentioned that on my old channel I had reacted to a track by Sterling Moss and Zyco, Zyco being one of the guys who I think runs, or at the very least is associated with the Acid Resistance label down in Colombia, so big ups to those guys. And indeed, I love the emoji sort of art on this particular release, which is Acid Resistance 5. But yeah, Zyco's tune was Sterling, The Underground. And I thought I had reacted to it, and I was like, I looked on my channel, but indeed, it was only on my old channel, and it wasn't one of the ones that right when I started this channel, I posted. Because again, for the first few weeks of this new channel, I was posting videos that I still had from my old channel. But then as time went on, I felt like, I've gotten better at doing these videos. I kind of mess with the sound. Like, certainly now I've improved the video. But yeah, ultimately I felt like, I'm just going to redo these. But some of them, I sort of forget about it. Then over time, it's, I meant to redo it quickly, but I didn't end up doing it. So Karsten pointed out that the reaction wasn't on the channel. So I wanted to go back and re-react to this. I'm trying to remember the year. If it's Acid Resistance 5, I'm going to say within the last maybe 3 years. I'll look it up in a moment. But yeah, we're going to listen to, as I said, Sterling Moss and Zyco, and the track is The Underground, which certainly makes a play, or plays off of the concept of the underground as a mode of transportation, but also uses it in reference to the underground nature of acid techno, even within the electronic dance music world. So give me one moment here. Okay, so this record is from 2020, so yeah, just about 3 years ago. And what are they up to now? They've done 2 more since this? They've done 3 more since this. One of which is sort of like a side, because it's like a Acid Resistance Limited. But yeah, they've had one as recently as last year. I've put that in a mix. I don't think I reacted to any of the tracks, so we'll get to that one soon. But here we go. This is Sterling Moss and Zyco. The track is The Underground, and it's on Acid Resistance 5 from 2020. Sterling's tracks always thump. Like his kick drums, they shake walls. The ride cymbal, I believe.
The Underground.
Very subterranean bass line. This is one where, it's thumping, it's rocking, but it really, once you get to the first major moment, it goes to another level. desperate industrial creep. The underground. Metallic, edgy. Sci-fi dystopia techno.
If you can hang till daybreak, you know you're coming home late. Ah, the underground, baby. The underground.
First time I heard this, it's like, what? Fuck. And then there were probably a number of headbangs and fist pumps. I mean, it's really like the punk rock emoji on the label. And the swirling acid. Oh. Now up into the chirp range. This, hyper intense Morse code, or like an android turning off. It's an intense sound, but I love the way it's layered over like each of the bars.
A journey full of sound and beats. One that will lead you down, way down to the underground. I said the underground, where your body begins to tremble and your hands become just a little pebble. The underground, where the party children are waiting and there's no contemplating. At the underground.
Now that you've heard that first drop, you just know, like you're just waiting for the other shoe.
You know you're coming home late, where your feet can take to flight, and the DJ makes it right. Ah, the underground, baby. The underground. I said the underground.
I love that.
The underground.
They bring back this dance vocal and they repeat it for the final bar. Oh, wicked wet acid just lashing around. My only complaint is that part doesn't go longer.
The underground.
That hard metallic electric synth. I think Sterling used a similar element in Bring the Bass on Jose's Official. I really love that track and I love that element, and that in that moment it reminded me of that. But like I said, my only lament is once it brings in that final element, that repeated dance vocal, it doesn't go for longer. And in that regard, it reminds me of Chris and Sterling's with Tittles, the techno, the reggae, and the heavy ska. When it finally gets to like the 5th acid gear, it only stays there for like a 32, or maybe it's a 64, but the last 16 of that is like with no kick drum. And I remember thinking, God, I love that tune, I love that part, just give me more of it. But I get it, like there's a balance, right? You know, if you go too long with something, then maybe it doesn't stand out in the way it does. But yeah, my thought there is I could use just, you know, give me one more 32 even of the everything in the track, because by the time they bring in that repeated dance vocal, it's the acids lashing, it's those electric edgy synths, it's everything. So yeah, I love it. It's interesting to listen to it this time. I feel like the parts in between, like in the opening of the track, you don't, you know, first time you hear it, you don't quite know what's happening. It's dark, it's subterranean, it's cool, but there's not, you know, you don't see too much acid about, so you're wondering what's going to happen. Then it brings in that just hammer blow, and then it goes back to the stripped down part, now with a bit more of a vocal, but you know it's going to get back to another acid drop. But it's funny how the opening, middle, and last part of the tune, they're all sort of support for those two huge drops. You know, sometimes tunes, especially in like regular techno, but even acid techno sometimes, it's kind of a plateau in that it sets a vibe, and it does that for most of the track. And maybe some bits come in, some bits or come out, then come back in, and so on. But there's no real obvious, clear peak. It's just, you know, it does what it does, and that's the vibe. Sometimes, you know, and this is maybe more common in trance, but sometimes there's like a really big moment that really grabs your attention, and I feel like this track has two of them. And in particular, I love the second version, or the second drop of it, because, as I said, that last, I don't know if it's a 64, I think that's what it is, but yeah, with the dance vocal, it's just everything together, it's brilliant. So, another top tune. Once again, shout out to Karsten, shout out to Sterling. You know, I first discovered his work through when he began working with Chris, which is like the late aughties, I believe. First tune I heard by them was I'm Bored, which I absolutely love. It's funny, in retrospect, it's not my favorite from them. Very quickly after that, I discovered a tune that perhaps remains my favorite from them, Acid Wah Wah Wah, and Impact on the Other Side is great as well. But yeah, bottom line, I've been listening to Sterling's tunes for, you know, like 15 years, something like that now. I'm aware, like, he has earlier stuff on racetracks, and some of it is in like a hybrid area between techno and hard house. As someone who, you know, in the very late 90s and early 2000s, I was into some Hoover sounds and some hard house, especially if it was mixed with acid, and, you know, whether acid trance, acid techno, you like the acid test label, acid TED. So yeah, bottom line, you know, I'd like to go back and get some of that stuff, but, you know, these days it's so hard to keep up with all the acid techno vinyl coming out, which is a good problem to have. You know, the fact that there's this much acid vinyl still coming out, techno, hardcore, and so on, it warms my heart and that of the train as well. But it does make it harder to like go back and get older records. But then the longer you wait, you know, the fewer copies there are for older records. Such is the conundrum of a vinyl DJ and collector. Nevertheless, do let me know what you think of this one. I will see you next time. Peace.